In the last demonstration, I showed you how to loop through image list so that you could remove the hidden files using the string position function and array push and array diff. And one of the things that left us with in our array is PDF file and also another file that is actually a PDF but that has a .gif extension. And the question now that we're left with is what happens, if we try to load those into some sort of image, and it's not going to work, if we try to put it inside of a gallery. So we need to figure out how to actually be able to test for that. And the way we can actually test for that is not just by looking at the file extension, because you can see here that if somebody, just renames the file extension to .gif, even though it is a PDF, if somebody wanted to try to be malicious, or if it was just an accident, then you can see that just looking at the file extension is not going to be a good way to search the string and try to strip off, or strip out anything that ends in the wrong file extension, because this one, it would still find this as a PDF and that would be a problem. So there's a thing that's called getimagesize, all right, and if we look at the php.net manual, it's got a bunch of information about how you use it, and I'll do a real quick summary. You can go here and read stuff about it yourself, but the way that getimagesize works is that it creates an array. What getimagesize does is it goes and it looks at a file and it tries to grab the header information about that file, and if it's an actual image, one of the pieces of information that it will actually grab is the MIME type. And a MIME type is a piece of information that is stored in the metadata of an image, and the MIME is going to always, it should always be correct, because it should be reading the actual headers pointers that are inside the file. So even if it has, say, a file extension of .gif when really it's a PDF, the MIME type should still be correct. And so one of the things that getimagesize will allow us to do is be able to figure out if something is actually an image and whether or not we should be able to keep it. If not, we can use the same method of array push, array diff to get it out of the array. So let's look at doing that. So if we jump back to our actual PHP file, let's just do something really quickly where we try to set something with get image size. So first of all, let's just try to create a variable. Let's call it size, and let's say size equals get image size, and then of what? What are we going to get the image size of? Well, the thing is that the only things that we have to use right now are things that are actually in an array, so that means we'd have to loop through them. Okay, so let's copy this for each command, and let's come down here. And actually, if we want to be really clear about what's going on, then we can actually, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to cut this out. And then I'm going to come down here below the pre, and I'm going to put something that's like an HR, or yeah, I'll do an HR, so that we can see that it's this horizontal rule is separating what we're doing here. And then I could even put like a paragraph tag that says get image size starts here, something like that. And then that way we kind of can see what's delineated where. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do some PHP tags. And let's go ahead and put our image size, and then again I said I'm going to copy this for each image list as file name. All right, so let's go ahead here and we're going to say for each image list as file name. We'll open this up, and then we'll say size, get image size, and then we have to actually do the get image size of something, so we're doing it of file name. Okay, and because get image size grabs a lot of different information about a file, that means that it has to be stored inside of an array. So this size is going to be an array, so that means that we can't just echo. We would have to do like a print r on size. All right. And then the other thing too is, since we're doing print R, we should wrap some pre-tags around this. So let's do that real quick. And really, one other quick thing. Let me go ahead and point something out here. What we have here is we're doing get image size of file name. Well, the problem with that is that if you look here, it's literally just the file name. Get image size needs an actual path to the file name. It can't just have the actual name of the file. It needs the actual path to the file name. And so this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky. So let's just see what happens if we use what we've already done so far. If we go up here and take a peek at our information, when we grabbed image list, we were using scandir, and we used this particular pathway, album, target gallery, medium. We use that as our pathway. So let's use that as the pathway to the file name. Okay, and then we need to concatenate. Let's just see if that works. Hit save, and we come over here, hit refresh, and in fact, it does work. Now, let's look what we actually have here. So I'm going to look at what get image size gave us, and what it returned was an array for each image. And you'll see here that we've got a bunch of different stuff. So the first value, the 0 key is 1100, that is the width. The 1 key is 825, that's the height. The 2 key, or the third position, that is going to be the image type. And you'll see here that this is also a MIME type. Well, they're very similar, but what it's doing is it's assigning a MIME to a numeric type, so that you could use image checking based on an integer value instead of a string value. So a JPEG is equivalent to the number 2 whenever it's assigned to the 2 key in the get image size. And these, by the way, always stay the same, or at least the 0, 1, 2, 3 bits, channel, and MIME associative array will always stay the same. There potentially can be fewer of these depending on the type of image, but and then of course it's 8 bits because it's a JPEG, it's RGB, so it's an 8-bit, excuse me, I meant to say it's 3 channels, therefore it's RGB. So that tells you that it's red, green, blue, so it's a 3-channel thing. It's an 8-bit file as opposed to something like a 16-bit file. And then it tells you a string value for the MIME type. Now, just so you're, in case you're curious about this value and you wanted to figure out all of the different types that it actually will test for, that get image size will recognize, one of the things that we could do is jump back over here just for testing purposes. And we can use this thing, we're going to type print R, because this is going to return a huge, long, crazy long array value. So if I use this function called get underscore defined underscore constants, and then it's got the open and close parentheses, it's going to do this crazy long array that's going to show us all of our defined constants in the page. Let's take a look. So if I hit refresh, you scroll down, you see this insanely long list here. Okay, well, what we are specifically looking for is, if you do a find, you could type img image type, all right, and then underscore, and then you see that it pulls up the defined constants that are in this page specifically for the get image size constant, and it shows you all the image types that it accepts. So GIF is 1, JPEG is 2, PNG is 3. It actually will look for a SWIFT file, so like a flash SWIFT file. And you can't do a whole lot with it, but you can at least get the dimensions of it, which is useful. A PSD, believe it or not, a BMP, which is a bitmap. It'll look for TIFF2, TIFF-MM, JPC. So some of these are like some weird file formats that you don't necessarily use. And then it also looks at JPEG 2000, which is also a really good, it's a file format that's starting to actually become accepted. It's coming back. It's been around forever, but it's actually useful for some things. And then you see if it's unknown, it returns a 0 value. But this is really good to know, so that these are the types that it checks for. Notice that it doesn't check for SVG, because SVG is actually an XML format. So this particular function that we're using wouldn't be able to grab SVGs because unless we were to add some additional like error checking and stuff and filters, but as the function's going to exist, it's not going to look for SVGs, but that could always be changed. Anyway, so you don't want to leave this here, but it's just so you have an understanding. And if you wanted to make a little copy of this, you could copy that, grab that, and like stick it into a text file for reference. In fact, I'm going to just do that right now. Okay, and so, oops, I pasted it twice. All right, so this is what we've got so far, and then this way we can quickly reference it. If we wanted to create an array of acceptable image types, then we could test to see if it matched that integer, and that way we're not having to look for, you know, strings. Then it's a really simple way to filter our stuff out. There are some other things that you could do, like if you wanted to see what type it was, there's also something where you can convert this, you know, to an actual string so that you could read it on the page. But anyway, we'll not go into that right now. So what I'm going to do is get rid of this define constants things, but or we could actually just comment that out, and then we can put a note out at the end so that if we ever uncomment it, we can say this grabs all constants on the page, and then you could say look for image type, like that. All right, so that's like a note to yourself, okay? And so this way, like I said, if we wanted to create an array with acceptable types, then we could do that. So if I save this and then come back here, hit refresh, all of those constants at the bottom are gone. So let's say that we do want to create something that we can filter. So let's say that we find GIFs acceptable. Let's say that we find, in fact, let's just do an array, okay? We find 1 acceptable, 2 acceptable, because it's a JPEG, 3 is a PNG, that's fine. We don't want SWIFTs, we don't want PSDs, and we don't want TIFFs. I'm going down the list here. And so we could just say that those are the acceptables. If you want a BMP, we could accept number 6. That would be an acceptable file type. So these could be our acceptable file types, 1, 2, 3, and 6. And also JPEG 2000. So let's do a 9. Those are pretty good ones. And some of these other ones won't show up quite right in all browsers. So let's stick with this. If we wanted to create this array, I can copy this. We could make an acceptable set of files, all right? And then what we'd want to do is make that before the for each. So we would say acceptable, or we could say acceptable mimes or acceptable, I'm just going to say acceptable. And then I'm going to put my array right there. Okay, and so when we loop through, if we want, we can test to see if the size 2 key is found in this array, then we're golden. That also makes me think, though, I need to actually test to make sure that the PSDs and TIFFs and things like that will show up. I didn't actually put those in my folder, so what I did was I just went back and I paused this for a second and I made a Photoshop file and a TIFF file and I stuck them in my medium folder. To be consistent, I can also just drop them into my large folder and my small folder just to be safe while I'm testing. And if I go back over here and refresh the page, you see that I've got my TIFF now showing up and I've got my PSD, and we all know that that's not going to do very well whenever we go to look at it in a web browser. Okay, so we need to get those out of there. So we really do need this acceptable list now.